Captive is one in a series of novels from Ryder Games in which the reader enters into a comic book and has decisions to make that affect the entire story. It's a great blend of board game, choose your own adventure, as well as some of the more complicated choose your own adventure type books from the 80s. In Captive specifically, you play as a man that is desperately trying to seek their lost child that's been kidnapped. The only information you're given is to show up at a spooky old house with $100 or something, and no police. When you enter the house, you are confronted, you make a split decision, and then from that point on, the rest is up to you. It's the type of game / book that puts you in control of what happens. And while a lot of choose your own adventure books seem to railroad you into certain directions, that's where Captive differs. You have to design your character at the front, giving them a certain amount of stats. You've got a small inventory that you keep track of, as well as a timer mechanism that you have to always be aware of, because you have to find your child within that certain amount of time. You have to do it alive, and you can really only carry so much stuff. And as complicated as that sounds, it's one of the more svelte and easy RPG elements that I've ever seen in a game. This is easier than having to keep track of chits or tokens, and it's made even easier by the bookmarks that you can print off on Ryder Games' website. Now, as I said, this is just one in a series, and none of the stories at this point are coexistent in the same universe that I'm aware of, and they all have pretty different mechanics, and from what I understand, this is one of the simpler to grasp. That doesn't make it easy. I died 6 times before I was able to complete this one book. Now, being a graphic novel, the way this is going to work is you're going to explore each particular panel that you are allowed to. In the panel will be a series of numbers, perhaps listed on the door, hidden in the art, or attached to a hallway. You then decide which avenue to explore. Do you want to take a look at the door on the left or the right? Then simply flip to the panel that corresponds with the number written on there. And this is where I have the biggest problem with the immersion of the game, is that if I'm walking around a spooky old house, I'm going to be aware of which rooms I've already been in. Unfortunately, that's not the case with Captive. I found myself stuck in loops a number of times, simply because I had forgotten the number of the door. Now, admittedly, the idea of repeating the same story and repeating the book after my first attempt, after I died the very first time, didn't sound that interesting to me. However, on subsequent plays, each individual time, it 1 got easier to complete until I was finally able to beat the book, and 2 was different every single time. There's still parts of this book that I haven't explored, and that's really interesting to me because it's not a very large book, and yet there are avenues that I completely missed, but was still able to make it out of the book alive eventually. It felt a little like approaching a video game level where you died pretty early on, but then progressively each try, things clicked, and it made a little more sense. Now, the book itself looks and feels great. It's the perfect size to give as a gift to put on the bookshelf, and it feels nice. The artwork, as I said, grim, dismal, but perfect for the tone of the book. Flipping through it is pretty easy. The biggest gripe that I have is that the binding itself sort of started to come undone. And while none of the pages actually fell out, it was a little disheartening to know that I flipped through this book maybe 6 times, spent a couple weeks with it, and it was already starting to fall apart. Now, Ryder Games has addressed this on a number of forums, and if you do have any issues, if you decide to buy this, they've said that they'd take care of it. And anything negative I really have to say about this book is minor quibbles, because this is an ideal solo experience. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. Every single time that I played this, I wanted to keep on playing, regardless of whatever obligations I had. It was intriguing, it was interesting, it was exciting, and it makes me wonder what the other offerings in this type of series, this format, has to offer. If the thought of taking control of your own destiny in a graphic novel and a comic book interests you at all, or even if you're interested in solo gaming, trying it, or you already enjoy solo gaming, this is something that I'd highly recommend taking a look at. And again, I can't speak for the rest of the Ryder line of games, but as far as Captive goes, yeah, I dug it.